How's it going? Dave here, and in today's video I'll be bringing you a Q&A. Thanks a lot for all of your questions. If you have any more questions, drop them in the comments and I'll answer them in a future Q&A video. So let's get started with how many questions? 7 questions from my boy Swifty Baps. So his first question is, what are your top 5 influences? So I'd have to say Mateus Asato, he is like absolutely incredible. Tosin Abasi, absolutely incredible as well. Paul Waggoner from Between the Buried and Me. I listened to so much Between the Buried and Me growing up. I was just learning all of their songs all the time. So him, who else? Marco Kubo from Veil of Maya. He's a guitarist I've been listening to for years on end. And then Aaron Marshall, who with Intervals has basically influenced me in the last few years quite a fair bit. The second question is, what's your view on 9 strings? So with 9-string guitars, I'm kind of in two minds about it. One part of me is like, oh, they're super fun. I used to have an 8-string guitar and there was nothing I loved more than just chugging away on that low F sharp. But then it gets to a point where it's a bit excessive, and I think the guitar is a mid-range instrument, so you should be kind of like playing heavy music kind of in the mid-range rather than tuning down to the bass register. If you can't sound heavy in drop D, then maybe you should reconsider if getting a 9-string is the right decision. When it comes to gear, do you think the gear makes the player or the player makes the gear? Okay, so I think it's a mixture of both. If I had to choose one, the player definitely makes the gear. You can have a horrible piece of equipment, yet if a amazing guitar player with amazing technique comes along, then they can make it sound at least decent. Whereas if you have a really amazing piece of gear and a terrible guitar player comes along, there's no chance that instrument is going to sound good. Swifty Baps also asks, what is your dream piece of gear? Can be a guitar, amp, processor, plug-in, etc. So for me, I think it's an Aristides 060. I'm planning on getting that as my next guitar. It's absolutely awesome. If you haven't checked Aristides out, they're really cool. Question number 5. What technique were you most excited to learn back in the day? I'd have to say sweep picking. Sweep picking is what I did non-stop, and it was like the thing I was good at over everything else. Question number 6. Your favorite musical moment, i.e. a certain show or a certain milestone in your career. So this is a tricky one. There's probably a few options. One that doesn't involve me playing anything was going to see a band called The Elijah in 2012. Me and my mate Scott, we went to go see them and we were left speechless after seeing them, and that inspired us to create a band, and this band is still going today. So that's one pivotal experience I had musically. In terms of my own musical career, I think playing TechFest, those are the most memorable experiences for me, I think. And question number 7 from Swifty Baps is, advice you would give to young Dave. So advice I would give to myself, a younger version of myself. Okay, so I would say, don't just play metal all the time, learn other genres, and stop playing video games so much and get practicing more, because at the end of the day, playing so many video games when I was younger didn't really get me anywhere, but practicing guitar did. Kazi Sibat, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, asks, what are the best ways of self-learning guitar? Okay, so obviously YouTube videos, which are great. Obviously you're watching my YouTube channel to learn guitar, which is awesome. But I think the absolute best way is any way where you've purchased a product, because now there's a monetary investment that you've made and you're more willing to learn because you don't want to waste the money that you've spent. So anything like a book or an online video course would be a good option for learning guitar. I find that books and video courses as well go way more in depth than on YouTube. I'd say if you want to get the most out of your self-learning, invest money into whatever you're doing. Reese Barrett asks, what would be a good practice routine for developing my sweep picking speed using a metronome, and what note length should I use? Also, thanks for the awesome content. So thanks, Reese, for the question. You said it in your question, use a metronome. But if I was to add on to that, I'd just say use a large variety of exercises. So practice 3-string, 4-string, 5-string, 6-string sweeps. Just a massive variety is going to help you improve your technique at sweep picking. And as for the note length that you should use, it doesn't really matter as long as it's a comfortable speed for you and you're not making mistakes. Masato Dan asks, which string gauges do I use? So I use 10 to 52, so kind of a light top, heavy bottom. That's because I like to play metal, but I also like to play other genres. So this doesn't necessarily mean you should use 10 to 52 gauge strings, but that's what I personally use. The final question, Horns of Abraxas asks, how do you maintain a Phrygian, Dorian, Aeolian, whateverian feel over the changes within a chord progression? So ideally, you want to be maintaining the chord, that is the root note of your mode, as much as possible. So say we're playing A Dorian, you want to be sticking onto an A minor as much as possible. You don't want to be deviating from that chord too much. But obviously, if you want to create a chord progression, then you want to be targeting the characteristic note of your mode. So for example, each mode has a different characteristic note, and Dorian, for example, it would be the major sixth. So you want to be making sure you're hitting that major sixth to get across that Dorian sound, and also just like landing on the root note at the end of your licks, that also helps. So I hope those answers were valuable to you guys. And again, if you have any more questions, drop them in the comments for a future video, and I'll see you in the next one.